Well, this is a time of exercising the muscles of holding multiple truths at once. We have to hold the despair, the fear, the anger, the anxiety, the hopelessness at the same time that we remind ourselves of the power of God's love. So I'm here to offer some words. I've been asked to offer words of call to action. And the first one is that may we, with God's strength, be able to take the action of self-care. The first place in which we must act is to make sure we are strengthening ourselves for the marathon that lies ahead. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. There is much we don't know, and there are some things we do know. Joy itself is an act of spiritual and political resistance. Every time we insist on our right and our God-given obligation to, whatever way it's expressed in our different traditions, experience a piece of joy or happiness, it is an act of resistance to a system of power that we know historically thrives on our misery and our apathy and our despair. So our first call to action must be in taking care of ourselves, not in a way that we descend into a place we think we're disengaging, but understanding that feeding our souls and taking care of our bodies will make it possible for us to engage in the marathon that lies ahead. Bimkom she'eno ish hishtadel ish. In our tradition we say, in a place where humanity has disappeared, it is our obligation precisely, dafka, at that place, to express our deepest humanity. In a place where humanity has disappeared and where no one is acting in the way of humanity, it is precisely that time and place that we must not descend to what looks as what is becoming the norm, but we must remember and remind ourselves often by looking into each other's eyes of what our deepest values are. We must not become whatever the lowest level is, but we must continue to build that sense of values we know to be true. In the moments of greatest challenge, that's when God is asking us to arrive at the highest level of who we are as human beings. We are told over and over again in the story of Noah, which we just read a couple of weeks ago in our Jewish tradition, that Noah was a righteous man in his generation, the text says. And the commentaries ask, why is it necessary to say in his generation? Either he's a righteous man or he's not. So some of the commentaries in our tradition say he was a righteous man only in comparison to how bad the generation in which he found himself. The standard was so low, the guy looked good. Well, other commentators say, no, he was a righteous man in any generation in which he would have been found, and that will be our test. Will we be righteous because we're judged by the profound evil that we see around, or will we be righteous by the values each of our traditions demand of us? That is our charge, I believe. Psalm 27 ends, Chazak v'yametz libecha. This might be the hardest of all. Be strong, strengthen your heart, and have courage. Kaveh el Adonai. Don't give up on hope of the eternal values we embody. And as Michael Walzer says in his classic book about the book of Exodus, ultimately all of us have to recognize the story of Exodus teaches us that Mitzrayim, the biblical Egypt, is everywhere. And we are still in Mitzrayim, which in Hebrew means narrow place, a place where it's hard to breathe, a place where it's hard to live, a place where it's hard to be expansive. Everywhere is Mitzrayim, is Egypt. And there is only one way through the desert, and that is by holding hands and taking it one small step at a time together.